Well, hey there, and welcome to the church video series. Great to have you with us. And in this lesson, we're going to be updating a previous lesson. In fact, the very first lesson of this entire training series. We're going to be revisiting that and updating the list of camera recommendations that we had in that piece. Now, I should make this clear now. These are not the camera recommendations that you're gonna want if you're interested in recording your church services or live streaming. These cameras are not meant for that, and that's not saying that they can't do that, but they're not necessarily optimized for that. So if that's what you're interested in, these will not be likely the recommendations for you. What these cameras will be good at, however, are video announcements, sermon trailers, baptism videos, testimony videos, welcome videos, church skits, church ads, anything like that. This is more cinematography. Here we're making films. We're not making just recordings of stuff that's happening. So with that disclaimer being said, let's jump right into it. The 4 best video cameras for your church. And the reason I'm suggesting 4 different cameras and not just one is because all churches are different. And the camera that might fit one church, my church, might not necessarily fit your church. So we have 4 different cameras that all have their own strengths and their own weaknesses, and we're going to analyze that. And you can pick what's best for your situation. Camera number 1, the Canon T3i, T4i, and T5i. Now you might be thinking that I just recommended 3 different cameras, but in fact those are just the new versions of the T3i, which I'm holding right here. This is the very first video camera that I ever owned, and it's a DSLR, which means that video is not its primary function, but it can shoot full 1080p high definition video, and it does it very well. Like I said, the very first video camera that I ever owned, and the reason we're starting off this list with the T3i or T4i or T5i is that it is the most affordable camera on this list. In fact, I got this one from Adorama on a clearance deal for only $429. Now, I would recommend you getting the T3i over the T4 or T5i because while they have updated some of the photography features in the newer models, I would say the video features that have been updated are not going to be worthwhile for the extra $300 to $500 that you're going to spend. So go get yourself a T3i, maybe on eBay or a refurbished or used model, and you can probably get it for under $500 like I did. A very good deal for a great camera. Strengths of the T3i, T4i, or T5i include the colors. Everything looks natural and the skin tones appear lifelike. It's also very affordable. Like I mentioned before, it's the cheapest camera on this list, and also, as I previously mentioned, the T3i can shoot still photos. It's primarily meant for photography, so you can do both with one camera. The weaknesses of the T3i that you should know about are soft images. The videos that are coming out of this camera aren't very sharp. Compared to the other cameras on this list, you're not going to get as much detail. And secondly, the recording limits. You can only record 22 minutes of consecutive HD footage, and this is likely going to be a downside for many churches that want to film church services, video announcements, interviews, etc. The second camera on this list is the PANASONIC GH3. Now, when I was using my T3i, after a while I became frustrated with its lack of features and its lack of detail in the images, and the camera that I stepped up to was the GH2. Now, unfortunately, the GH2 has been discontinued at this point, but it was replaced by the next edition GH3. And now there is a price jump in this as well, but with the price jump came a lot of new features. The strengths of a GH3 include you can shoot 1080p full high definition footage in 60 frames per second. None of the other cameras on this list can do that, and these numbers mean that the GH3 can shoot at 60 frames per second in full high definition, and so you can have full resolution slow motion. And like I said, most consumer cameras still can't do this, and this is one of the most enticing features of the GH3. Number 2, the resolution and detail in the GH3 is going to be about 3 times the amount of a T3i. So you get a lot more detail and resolution in your videos. And finally, the overall quality, the GH3 is simply a more robust and capable video camera than the T3i. But of course, with that, it's also a little bit more expensive, coming in at about $1,000. The weaknesses. Price. The price of the GH3 isn't outrageous by any means, but it is such a jump from the GH2 that for me, it was an issue. And number 2, colors. Canon is notorious for producing great colors in their images that look lifelike. Now, Panasonic's colors, on the other hand, leave something to be desired. I've always found they have a little bit of a green cast to them, and they just don't pop in the same way that Canon colors do. The third camera on this list is the Canon 5D Mark III, and originally this list only consisted of 3 different cameras, but that had to change when Magic Lantern introduced the new RAW capability hack for the Mark III. And what that basically means, if you don't know what RAW footage means, it basically means that all footage when it's coming out of video cameras, at least consumer cameras, is compressed. And that means that you have a very big file and you have to shrink it to get it on the small cards that our cameras use. But with a hack introduced by the company Magic Lantern, now we can get raw footage out of the Mark III, and raw footage is completely uncompressed, which means that it has no artifacts, you don't lose any detail, the dynamic range is greater, the colors are a lot better, and this just means you're getting an overall way better image. And I didn't even believe it myself until a friend of mine actually took out his camera with the hack and we shot it on a production shoot, and it was just fabulous seeing the image that was coming out of this camera. The Canon 5D Mark III was never meant to do this, but now it can. The strengths of the Mark III: number 1, raw video, obviously. Number 2, full frame. The Mark III sensor is full frame, which means there's no crop factor. If you don't know what crop factor is, there's a complete lesson on that, so check that out. And number 3, still photos. The Mark III also shoots tremendous photographs, making it a legitimate dual threat camera if you're trying to knock down 2 birds with a single camera stone. And the weaknesses: number 1, price. The Mark III comes in as the priciest camera on this list by far. The $3,500 price tag is a huge investment for most churches. And number 2, hack is necessary. Keep in mind that the Mark III cannot shoot raw video or even beautiful, fabulous video without this hack. It requires the firmware hack. Now, it's not entirely difficult to do this hack, but it's not entirely simple either. And number 4, our list concludes with my favorite video cameras, the Blackmagic cinema cameras. These are in fact the only cameras on this list that are pure video cameras. The other 3 cameras are DSLR cameras, and that means that their primary function is photography, and video was added as a secondary option and thought. And so not as much emphasis, not nearly as much, was put into the video functions of those cameras. But the Blackmagics, on the other hand, are pure video cameras. And there's 2 models that you can look into. There's this one, which is the cinema camera, the very first one, and it's about $2,000. And then there's the smaller, younger brother, the pocket cinema camera, that's $1,000. Now, for a $1,000 price jump, I'd say this is the one to go. Originally, I had pre-ordered the pocket cinema camera the very same day that it came out, April 8th, 2013, but after seeing this price drop from $3,000 to $2,000, this just offers so much more, it was worth the extra $1,000. So I had to pull that trigger. The strengths of the Blackmagic cameras are: number 1, raw video. Just like the Mark III, these cameras shoot raw video footage that is uncompressed and gorgeous. But the bonus is that you don't need a hack. They come with the camera. Strength number 2, the colors. The Blackmagic colors are unmatched, even by Canon. In my opinion, they're just beautiful. And number 3, the size. The pocket camera looks like an ordinary point and shoot camera, and this means that you can take it places that you can't take other cameras. And it's also less intimidating for the people that you're filming. And even the full-size cinema camera is still pretty compact itself. And number 4, the price. The pocket cinema camera, like I mentioned, costs $1,000, and the full cinema camera costs $2,000. They boast the same features of cameras that are going to cost you 10 times their price. The price is simply ridiculous. Looking at the weaknesses. Number 1, Pro. And what I mean by that is that when you look at the price of these cameras, it seems like they're meant for consumers, like the average church, let's say. But that is a clever disguise. These are professional cameras. If you haven't purchased a camera yet, do not buy these cameras as your first one. They're going to require additional accessories. They're going to require incredibly powerful computers to operate them, and you're going to need to have giant hard drives to store the large file sizes as well. Number 2, the battery life. I should have mentioned earlier that the battery life of the Mark III with the hack is incredibly poor as well, only about 7 to 8 minutes, and the cinema cameras aren't that much better themselves. The battery life on my cinema camera is anywhere between 30 and 90 minutes, and that's just not good enough, and that means you're gonna have to purchase additional batteries or another power solution. Now, I did buy a battery pack from Switchtronics, and that cost another $400. It works well, but it was pricey. And the third weakness, we're gonna mention file size. When you're recording in RAW, the file sizes are gigantic, and if you wanna work with raw video, you're gonna need a powerful computer and plenty of free space. the needs of your church are different than the needs of my church. So instead of offering with you one solution that I think is the best camera for everybody, I'm offering 4 different solutions, and that is still much better than choosing from hundreds and hundreds of different cameras. If you're interested in knowing what I use the T3i still for all my video announcements because the file sizes are small and I'm very familiar with it, and then I use the Blackmagic Cinema camera for all my other videos, including documentaries, productions, sermon trailers, vision videos, anything that I want to look fabulous and very, very nice, because the cinema camera just cannot be touched in terms of image quality. So take a look at the 4 choices, find out which one's best for you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. Thanks for watching.